went at a greater speed, and the reason for that is we started to get into the judgments, and there's going to be 3 sets of 7, the seal, the trumpet, and the bowl judgments. And we said that I'm trying to find a good blend of, on the one hand, going slow enough where if there are details that crop up that people want to ask questions about, we can do that. But at the same time, it's, at least for me, it's difficult to read about these judgments that are coming. And so I don't want to dwell on them, so I'm trying to find a balance between moving at a speed that can satisfy both of those aims. So, and I ask for your help on that. If I need to speed up or slow down, just help me with that. We had finished last week in chapter 7. We had done most of the seal judgments, and every now and then God will take a break from the judgments, and we'll jump off to a little side scene, either on the earth or in heaven. And so right now we're in one of those side scenes. We've broken the 6th seal, haven't gotten to the 7th one yet, and God kind of goes to an aside, and we see a people group. We're already in verse 9, chapter 7, verse 9. We just talked about 144,000 sealed people, 12,000 from each of the tribes of Israel, that are going to be God's witnesses during this tribulation time. The church is in heaven. God has come back to Israel. He's restored their original purpose of preaching the gospel. And we're about to read about a second group of people, starting in verse 9, if someone would like to read there, and just as far as you would like to read.
After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands, and they cried out in a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb." All the angels were standing around the throne, and around the elders and the 4 living creatures. They fell down on their faces before the throne and worshipped God, saying, "Amen, praise and glory and wisdom and thanks and honor and power and strength be to our God forever and ever. Amen."
So I'm kind of wondering who these people are, who this great multitude is, but then I don't have to wonder, because in verse 13...
Then one of the elders asked me, "These in white robes, who are they, and where did they come from?" I answered, "Sir, you know." And he said, "These are they who have come out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in the temple, and he who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. Never again will they hunger, never again will they thirst. The sun will not beat down on them, nor any scorching heat, for the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd. He will lead them to springs of living water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes."
Thank you. So if you have any comments or questions, that's fine. The one thing I'd like to point out that, as we read through these the first 6 seal judgments we've read, and the trumpets and bowls are about to happen, that the tribulation is going to be an awful time, and how fortunate we are to be able to have faith in Christ now. But what is positive, and what I take away from this, is even though it's going to be a terrible, terrible time for believers to be, there are still people being saved. There's still hope during this time. It said that these people were the ones coming out of the Great Tribulation. That was in verse 14. These are the ones coming out of the Great Tribulation, and they are, quote, verse 9, a vast multitude. So even in this dark and desperate time, God still cares about people. He's still saving people. So there's a glimmer of hope that I wanted to point out here. It's not all bad news. So that was my little commentary. Anybody else want to share things, questions on things from chapter 7 there?
So Dan, these are the people at the end of that 7 years?
There is question. It does say Great Tribulation, and typically, when the Bible uses the phrase Great Tribulation, they're referring to the back half, the last 3.5 years. There's some debate among the commentators. I don't take one position or another. Whether it's the first half or the second half, to me, at the end of the day, does it really matter which half it's from, or both halves? They're coming from the tribulation, and they are being saved.
So this is all post-rapture?
This would be post-rapture, yeah. So these are not members of the church. These are people who were saved. Probably, my guess would be, since they mention it right after the 144,000, my guess would be because they mention it, it's probably people who were saved through the preaching of the 144,000. I don't know that, but coming right after a discussion on that, it would seem to be likely.
I forgot forget, is there no death during the tribulation, or just you can't commit suicide?
There is going to be, quite, as we're going to see, there's going to be quite a bit of death. There are times, individual instances, where God will prevent suicide from occurring. But no, there's a lot of death. In fact, one of the seals, I think we've already lost a fourth, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a fourth of the Earth's population has already died from the first 4 seal judgments.
So people won't be able to take their own lives.
That's correct. Any other thoughts or questions on chapter 7?
The end of verse 17 says, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. I've heard some people comment, well, I thought there would be no tears in heaven. So if there are, or is this implying that their tears were on earth, and when they get to heaven, the very fact of entering heaven will wipe away the tears?
I would kind of favor that. I mean, presumably these are martyrs, people who went through a great deal of suffering, and so that would seem to be, in my opinion, the best interpretation.
It's hard to imagine when you read through, like, when it says never be thirsty, never be hungry, never be. When you think about all the people that are already suffering all of those things, it's hard to imagine worse. I mean, I'm not in their shoes, but there's people all over the world that are suffering all of these things to extremes right now, and so it's hard to imagine a tribulation that would be even worse than that.
That's true. We've only gone through the seal judgments. The trumpets and the bowls will get progressively worse as we go on. Well, the little aside is over, and in chapter 8, God goes back to the judgments, starting with the 7th and final seal. If someone would like to read the first 6 verses there, chapter 8.
When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Another angel, who had a golden censer, came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne. The smoke of the incense, together with the prayers of the saints, went up before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and hurled it on the earth. There came peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Then the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to sound them. The first angel sounded his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood. It was hurled down upon the earth. A third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea turned to blood. Verse 8.
I said 6, but that's okay.
Sorry.
Overachiever. All right. Anything that strikes us there? I was taken in the first verse where, you know, we've got all these things happening. Six seal judgments, one after another, boom, 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 boom. And then the 7th one, the final one, I'm expecting something really big, you know, like in a fireworks show, they saved the best for last is the grand finale. And they broke the 7th one, and what happens instead? Yeah.
That's amazing to me.
And I was just going to say, to my mind, it seems like, in a way, that's even worse, isn't it? Like when I was, I don't have kids, so you can think of this from a parent's point of view. I'm thinking from a kid's point of view. It's like when my parents were like really mad at me. Like if they were mad, they would yell, but if they were like really mad, they got quiet. And then you're like, oh. That's
wrath is coming.
That's not good. It's that sense of like impending doom that's just hanging there. And so that's how I read that. It's like just silence for half an hour.
You were just talking about how you saw your parents interact with your siblings. I mean, they never were like that with you,
Right.
of course.
Yeah, Jason was a troublemaker. No, I'm just teasing.
So even the songs that the angels are singing before God are going to stop.
Silence in heaven for a brief period of time.
Would that be something symbolic along the lines of this, on the 7th day God rested?
Well, there he was resting from his labor, and he was setting an example for us. Here, the context is one of judgment. And so, like I said, I took that as a kind of calm before the storm. It gets your attention that something big is about to happen. That's kind of how I read it.
Steel yourself up and prepare yourself mentally for something difficult.
Because here it comes.
I bet that doesn't feel very brief. I bet that's the longest 30 minutes.
All right. And then Logan read the first trumpet. So we've got hail and fire mixed with blood on the earth, and a third of the earth was burned. I can't even imagine that. A third of the trees and green grass. And, that ecosystem. What's that going to do to the environment? The animals die, and then if the animals die,
Global warming.
Yeah, we already had a famine, and now that's going to make things worse. It's just a domino effect
Now, it says somewhere in the Bible that all the elements will be burned up.
at the end. Yeah.
Okay, at the end, because I remember using that for my chemistry teacher, who was having us remember all the elements. He wasn't a big fan of that verse.
He didn't care for your,
I still had to memorize them. What does it matter? They're all going to be burned up. Yeah, not a good idea.
that didn't get you any, huh?
Okay. And then you read the second one, didn't you? Okay. So there's a lot of discussion in verse 8 there. It says a great mountain, something like a great mountain, ablaze with fire was hurled into the sea. And people are trying to think, well, what is that? And boy, you get 100 different commentaries, and you're going to find 100 different things. I don't know if it really matters what it is. Even John doesn't say it's a great mountain. What does he say? It's something
Like a huge mountain.
like. So he's not even sure. And you see that word like a lot. But whatever it is, the result is a third of the sea becomes blood. A third of the living creatures of the oceans, the sea, died. Can you imagine that? The stench that would be. You get all those creatures washing up on shore. A third of the ocean dead. Every sea line just covered with dead animals. Plus the blood would just be, it's time to sell your beachfront property. No one's going to want to live there then.
So the things that are popping into my head, is this like a third, like a section of the world, or is it going to be more random and scattered around the world?
That's a good question, yeah.
That's where my brain goes.
Ooh, that's interesting, because then it makes you wonder
If there's more
particular
judgment
area.
in a certain area.
Yeah. Afraid we're in a bad area. A third of the sea turned into blood.
Mhm.
Huh.
So does that mean like out of all of the oceans, or is John referring to a specific sea here?
I think that gets back to what she was asking, was is it a continuous 1/3 of the ocean, or is it little pieces here and there that add up to a third altogether? And we don't know.
I wish we had like a globe or map of the whole universe to see approximately what would a third of that be? Like what oceans we talking? It's going to be a
Well,
lot.
it says seas, it doesn't automatically assume oceans either. It can be lakes, it can be all water.
Mhm.
Seas is a general term for water.
Yes, although they are going to specifically in a bit talk about fresh waters, lakes and streams will be dealt with separately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the next seal.
That's something to look forward to.
The trumpet.
Pacific would probably be a third.
So speaking of that, let's read the third trumpet, which is 10 and 11.
That's a good question.
Oh, one real quick thing.
Greg's got another.
Interesting question. At the time this was written,
Sorry.
they didn't know about the Americas.
Mm.
So this could be just
Their work.
their world.
Well, this is a vision though of what he saw in the future, right?
So if you think about 1/3 of the world that they
That they knew of at the time.
so could that be 1/3 of the Europe and Asia? That'd be 1/3. That'd be all that they knew, but that'd be.
Well, that's true at their time, but as Chris points out, he is seeing a vision of
Yeah.
what
What's
is
to
to come,
come.
what is to come. Plus, the whole purpose of this is God's judgment on what?
On all.
of the unbelieving world. So that would be, and this is it. This is the end. It's everyone. Everyone who's ever rejected Christ, of any people, group, tribe, or nation around the world, it's judgment time. I think this is for everyone.
Stay out of Europe, just in case.
Just in case.
Okay, what, is there anything particular about this grass? Because we have a third of the earth was burned up, a third of the sea turned to blood, a third of the living creatures in the sea died. So we got a third, and then we have in verse 7, at the end of verse 7, and all, and not just grass was burned up, all the green grass was burned up. I mean, that just kind of sticks out a little bit different, all the green grass. What?
Well, there couldn't have been much left after the famines and everything else. Like, you wouldn't think there would be a lot of green grass left. It'd be burned up.
One thought I had is green grass to me in the spring brings hope. It gives, like, it represents life and hope and freshness, renewal, excitement.
All of the.
Nothing for crazy animals to eat.
Yeah, so I was thinking, as the animals are toast,
It's the bottom
So
of the
third-
food
No
chain,
food
so
for
everything else.
goats and-
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Cows.
And key wildcrats.
Yeah.
I mean, you said it was a third of the trees, but all the grass.
Yeah. Third of the trees, but all the grass.
giraffes will still live, they eat trees.
But yeah, the bottom of the food chain is going to all be dead, and that's going to destroy the rest of the food chain.
Yeah.
Well, that's where, isn't one of the prayer seals, they said some of the beasts of the earth, the animals are gonna start eating people. And maybe that's because things like the grass are no longer there.
You are the green grass.
Just kill me before you eat me, don't eat me alive. That's pretty morbid. Wow.
Trumpet 3, verse 10 and 11.
The third angel blew his trumpet. Then a great star fell from the sky. It looked like a blazing torch. It fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the water turned bitter. Many people died from it.
A star, great star, blazing like a torch, fell from heaven. Again, there's so much symbolism, it's difficult to be certain. I take this, I kind of follow the majority of commentators, I take this as an angel. As we're going to see in Revelation, often angels are referred to as stars. We'll see that in just down a few verses in chapter 9, verse 1. They're describing an angel as a star, and also that it's named. Interestingly, when I was preparing for this, I was reading, does anybody know,
Screw tape ladders.
does anybody know how to say wormwood in Ukrainian? Of course, everyone raises their hand because who doesn't know how to say wormwood in Ukrainian, right? That's a wonderful question, Hanky. Good job, good teaching. It's actually, this is what I heard. It turns out that it's not exactly true, but there was this big movement going around a few years ago because they said, there was this guy on top and it said, actually, in the Ukrainian language, wormwood is Chernobyl, the plant that blew and poisoned the waters. And so they're saying, could this be, the end times? Is this one of the trumpets? And it turns out, because I was interested, I'm like, ooh, that is kind of interesting. So I was reading that, and apparently in Ukrainian, it's not a wormwood. There's two related plants in the same family. Wormwood is one, and then there's another more common unpoisonous plant that Chernobyl actually means. So it is the name of a plant, but it's related to, but not wormwood. So
How disappointing.
we're not in the trumpet judgments yet, which would have been weird because what would have happened to the first two?
I think we would know.
I think we will know first.
So the seas have already been struck, and here it's the fresh water, and it says that many people are dying because they've been made bitter. Anyone comment on that? Questions, or should we go into the fourth trumpet?
What's your I'm sure there are people that say, LaHaye and Jenkins in their famous Left Behind series, I think they talked about it as the star as just being a meteor hitting the Earth.
That is a common interpretation. That's one of the, well, there's many interpretations. That's one of them. That is one of them.
But how would a meteor target just the rivers and springs without causing devastation to all the
Yeah,
surrounding?
okay.
And how would it make it better too?
Yeah.
If God's driving it.
Must have a certain chemical in it
The
or.
sulfur or,
Yeah, something in it.
Or it doesn't react with salt water, but it reacts with fresh water.
For a
Yeah.
third. I'm just thinking logic. I'm thinking, well, even if a meteor did hit, it might poison the immediate waters, but this says a third of the waters on, presumably on the Earth. And a meteor large enough to poison that much water would have to be large enough, or I would think, if a meteor of that size hit the Earth,
Well, but
You're gonna have
the
that
Great
risk.
the Great Lakes are,
yeah.
I grew up in Michigan, I forget what percentage.
well,
It's like a fifth of fresh water in the world.
That's true.
That's a good
And
point.
is that just the lakes, or does that
That's
include the
just-
Mississippi and
No,
all
that's just
tributaries?
the
Just the
lakes.
lakes.
That's just the lakes.
Yeah.
So it could be a local.
So cross
Time
that
to
off
move,
the
honey,
list
the
of
meteor's
places.
coming here. But yeah, I mean, it can be done.
I think it's just safe to say.
Not that guy couldn't do it, but I'm saying there's a logical.
That's true.
There's a lot of thought that went into the end of the thing. Like, this is not just, I'm gonna pack it up, put it in a suitcase and call it done. I mean, this is pretty well thought out. Wow.
So then is it different sections of the world that are being targeted in a series?
Yeah, it's back to that question, is it local or is it spread out around the world and adds up to a total of a third?
Okay, fourth angel?
Fourth angel, okay. Let's finish off chapter 8 here, I think we've got time to do that. Somebody like to read the remainder of chapter 8.
The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark. A third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night. As I watched, I heard an eagle that was flying in midair call out in a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the trumpet blast about to be sounded by the other three angels."
Thank you.
Whoa, 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 because of the trumpet blast about to be sounded. I'd say whoa, 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 based on the ones that have already been sounded.
All right, it makes you wonder, well, how bad are these gonna be compared to the ones we've already hit?
I'm so intrigued by that third. What is it with the third? Does that mean anything? Third?
You mean symbolically?
Yeah.
Well, we saw fourths before in the seal judgments. The trumpet judgment, the preferred fraction seems to be a third. And when we get to the bowl judgments, we're going to get another fraction, which is 100%. The bowl judgments are going to affect not a fourth or a third, but the entire.
So it started out a fourth,
So
and then went to a third.
they're progressively getting more and more, not just severe, but more and more coverage as well. And I'm trying to remember, it says eagle there. I was thinking the old King James Version was angel instead, but I can't, my phone is not behaving. Let me hear. Let's see, that's 8, 13. King
It
James.
says an angel in King James.
It does, okay.
I heard an angel flying.
I was just curious. Most of them do say, because I grew up on King James Version, so that's a little different to me, but if it says eagle here, I'm sure that's correct.
Well,
So- No, go ahead.
it seems like I remember a reference to the eagle with one of the,
It was one of the four living creatures,
all right,
had the appearance of an eagle.
was this the same?
So is this the living creature that looks like an eagle, or is this an actual eagle itself?
Or is this the same one?
This Bible says, as I watched, I heard an eagle that was flying high in the air. I called out in a loud voice, how terrible it will be for those living on earth, how terrible. So, well, they will suffer as soon as the next three angels blow their trumpets.
I'm curious too with the 1/3 darkened, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean the sun will still shine, but at a third intensity? It'll just be dimmer?
But doesn't it say that it,
A third of the day will be dark.
yeah, a third day would be dark, so it's almost like a third of the side of the sun, so as you rotate around it,
So the actual time period is shortened by
right.
A
That's
third
how I would
part of
read
the
it.
sun was spent in a third part of the moon and a third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it.
It's gonna be a section of the rotation, but there's gonna be
Where's it?
darkness somewhere in the rotation.
Aren't we basically that way now?
My study bylaws are coming, this could mean that the 24-hour of the day and night will be shortened to 16 hours, or that the power of the sun, moon, and stars will be reduced by 1/3.
And I'm not sure,
Well, if it's reduced by a third, we'd freeze to death,
Yeah.
or we wish we'd froze to death.
It would,
Very
well, it takes a while. Then the question is it gonna remain that way or is the sun gonna go back to full strength? Because yeah,
There's enough heat on the earth that we'd survive for about 40 or 50 years.
There's enough what?
Heat that would be retained on the earth that we'd survive for quite a while, actually.
Is there anywhere that it talks about,
That's what I'm
so these 7 seals, are they're, and you've probably gone over this, I'm just gonna be, but during the tribulation, so during that, so the whole length of the time for all of these seals is,
this is during the 7-year period. Some people try and say, well, the seals will be during this half, and then the trumpets will be during this half. There's not 100% agreement, but most commentators seem to feel the seals are in the first 3.5 years, and then the trumpets and bowls are towards the end, largely because they're so severe, as we're going to see. These sound severe, but when you get to the bowls,
There's no point
you
in
just couldn't
severe.
survive. It
Right.
would have to be near the end of the tribulation, or just everyone would die. They're that severe. Again, it's speculation to some degree, but I think it's probably pretty reasonable.
it's not likely that this happened in 7 days.
No, this is going to be spread out.
Something to look forward to, spread out suffering.
And I know we're low on time. I've got one last thing to share, and then I'll give you guys the floor here. I was reading that, and I was thinking, well, of all the other things that have happened, people dying from poisoned water and the grass being burned up so all the animals starve and destroying the food chain, how does darkness, I mean, so the day's a little darker. How does that fit in with all the others? It doesn't seem to be that severe.
Fear.
And- Huh?
Fear.
Fear.
And vitamin D, depression.
That's the vitamin D deficiency judgment.
I mean, you really talked about the green grass being a
Despair.
source of hope. That's-
Despair.
What are you thinking?
Yeah.
Well, I'm cheating. I'm looking ahead. We haven't gotten to the bowl judgment. We said that right now we're at a third, but the bowl judgments will repeat a lot of these, but with 100% of the earth. And the 5th bowl judgment is in 1610, and I'll just read it. It says, it's short. It says, the 5th angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and his kingdom was plunged into darkness. People gnawed their tongues because of the pain and blasphemed God. So it would appear that maybe, at least for the bowl judgment of darkness, it's not just physical darkness, but in some way it is actually causing pain and suffering as well. That's not mentioned in this trumpet, so maybe the darknesses are of different quality, or maybe they're of the same quality, it's just not mentioned here, but in the bowl judgment, it does specifically say there would be pain associated with the darkness. So,
I
just
don't know
putting
if
that out.
quality is the right word.
All right, I will be quiet. Any thoughts or questions as we conclude chapter 8?
Very good discussion today. I'll close this in prayer. Father, thank you.